I rescued 100 abandoned dogs. Their transformations are heartwarming. The rain poured relentlessly as Jimmy Donaldson, better known as MrBeast, pulled his SUV into the muddy driveway of a dilapidated animal shelter on the outskirts of Greenville. The building was barely standing, its roof sagging under years of neglect, and the faint sound of barking echoed through the stormy night. A flickering neon sign above the entrance read, "County Animal Rescue," in faded letters, though it hadn't seen proper funding or care in decades. Jimmy stepped out of the car, pulling his hoodie tighter against the cold. He had come here on a tip from a local volunteer who had reached out to him online, pleading for help. "These dogs have no one," the message had read. "They're starving, sick, and scared. If something doesn't change soon, they won't make it." At first, Jimmy wasn't sure how he could help. His philanthropic projects typically focused on people, but the thought of 100 abandoned dogs suffering in silence tugged at his heartstrings. After all, kindness didn't discriminate between species. Pushing open the creaky door of the shelter, Jimmy was hit with a wave of smells. Wet fur, mildew, and something metallic that made his stomach churn. Inside, rows of rusted cages lined the walls, each one holding a dog in varying states of distress. Some whimpered softly, their ribs visible beneath matted fur. Others lay motionless, too weak to even lift their heads. A frail woman in her 60s emerged from a back room, clutching a clipboard and looking utterly exhausted. "You must be Jimmy," she said, forcing a weary smile. "I'm Ruth, the caretaker here. Thank you for coming." "What's the situation?" Jimmy asked, his voice tight with concern as he scanned the room. Ruth sighed heavily, gesturing toward the cages. "We've been abandoned by the county. No funding, no supplies, nothing. I've been doing what I can with donations, but it's not enough. These poor souls deserve so much better." Jimmy knelt beside one of the cages, meeting the gaze of a skeletal golden retriever mix. Her eyes were dull, clouded with pain, but when Jimmy extended his hand, she licked it weakly. A gesture of trust, despite everything she'd endured. "How long have they been like this?" Jimmy asked, his throat tightening. "Months," Ruth replied quietly. "Some have been here for years. Owners drop them off and never look back. Others are strays we picked up off the streets. Without intervention, most won't survive another winter." Jimmy stood abruptly, his mind racing. He couldn't walk away. Not now, not after seeing the desperation in those eyes. "We're getting them out of here," he declared firmly. "All of them." Ruth blinked in disbelief. "That's impossible. Where would you even take them?" "I'll figure it out," Jimmy said, without hesitation. "But they're not staying here. Not tonight." With that, Jimmy called Chandler, his business partner, explaining the situation and requesting immediate assistance. Within hours, a team arrived with vans, crates, food, and medical supplies. As the rescue operation began, Jimmy worked tirelessly alongside volunteers, gently coaxing frightened dogs into carriers and loading them onto vehicles. Each dog had a story written in their scars, their posture, their hesitant glances. There was Max, a pit bull with a broken leg. Luna, a shivering Chihuahua mix covered in mange. And Charlie, a Labrador whose tail wagged feebly despite his emaciated frame. As the last van pulled away from the crumbling shelter, Jimmy climbed into the passenger seat of the lead vehicle, exhaustion weighing heavily on his shoulders. "This is just the beginning," he muttered to himself, staring out at the rain-soaked road. Because saving these dogs wasn't just about giving them food and shelter, it was about giving them a second chance at life. And Jimmy intended to deliver exactly that. The convoy of vans carrying the rescued dogs arrived at a sprawling property on the outskirts of Greenville, a temporary sanctuary Jimmy had secured for their rehabilitation. The facility, donated by a local farmer who supported Jimmy's mission, featured spacious kennels, fenced-in yards, and a team of veterinarians ready to assess each dog's condition. As the crates were unloaded, Jimmy felt a mix of relief and dread. Relief because the dogs were finally safe, but dread because the scale of their suffering became clearer with every passing moment. One by one, the veterinarians examined the animals, documenting injuries, illnesses, and behavioral issues. Many suffered from malnutrition, parasites, and untreated wounds. Others exhibited signs of trauma, cowering at the slightest touch or barking uncontrollably when approached. "It's worse than we thought," one of the vets admitted grimly as she tended to Max, the pit bull with the broken leg. "Some of these dogs may never fully recover. Not physically, and certainly not emotionally." Jimmy clenched his fists, frustration bubbling beneath the surface. He had known the task would be difficult, but hearing it laid out so bluntly made the reality hit harder than expected. "We'll do whatever it takes," he said firmly, "no matter how long it takes or how much it costs." Over the next few days, Jimmy immersed himself in the operation, working alongside volunteers to care for the dogs. He fed them, bathed them, and spent hours sitting quietly beside those too scared to interact. Slowly but surely, progress began to show. Charlie, the emaciated Labrador, started gaining weight, his tail wagging more enthusiastically with each meal. Luna, the tiny Chihuahua mix, allowed Jimmy to stroke her head after days of flinching away. And Max, despite his painful recovery, proved to be a gentle giant, nuzzling anyone who came near. But not all the dogs responded as quickly, or at all. There was Bella, a German Shepherd mix who refused to eat or leave her kennel. Her eyes were hollow, her spirit seemingly broken. No amount of coaxing could convince her to trust again. Then there was Rocky, a scrappy terrier with a penchant for biting. His aggression stemmed from years of abuse, leaving him unable to distinguish friend from foe. Watching these cases unfold weighed heavily on Jimmy. For every success story, there was a reminder of how much work remained and how fragile hope could be. Determined to find solutions, Jimmy reached out to experts in animal behavior and rehabilitation. Together, they developed personalized plans for the most challenging cases, incorporating therapy techniques, socialization exercises, and patience above all else. He also turned to his online community for support, sharing updates about the dogs' journeys and encouraging fans to contribute to their care. The response was overwhelming. Donations poured in from around the world, along with messages of encouragement and offers to adopt once the dogs were ready. But perhaps the most impactful moment came during a late-night conversation with Ruth, the shelter caretaker who had stayed on to assist with the rehabilitation effort. "These dogs are fighters," Ruth said softly as she sat beside Jimmy in the dimly lit barn. "They've endured things no living creature should ever have to face, but they're still here. That says something, doesn't it?" Jimmy nodded, his gaze fixed on Bella, who lay curled up in the corner of her kennel. "It does," he agreed, "and that's why we can't give up on them. Not now, not ever." Inspired by Ruth's words, Jimmy doubled down on his efforts. He hired additional staff, invested in specialized equipment, and even arranged for hydrotherapy sessions to aid in physical recovery. Slowly but surely, transformations began to emerge. Bella took her first steps outside after weeks of coaxing, her tail flicking tentatively as she sniffed the fresh air. Rocky allowed Jimmy to pet him without growling, a small victory that brought tears to everyone's eyes. Each milestone, no matter how minor, fueled Jimmy's determination to see the project through. But just as momentum seemed to build, an unexpected challenge arose, one that threatened to derail everything. A neighboring property owner filed a complaint, claiming the presence of so many dogs posed a nuisance. Citing noise concerns and zoning violations, they demanded the sanctuary shut down immediately. When Jimmy heard the news, his heart sank. After everything they'd accomplished, losing the facility would mean starting over from scratch, a setback the dogs couldn't afford. Desperate for a solution, Jimmy organized a meeting with local officials, pleading his case before the city council. "These dogs aren't just animals. They're survivors," he argued passionately. "They've been abandoned, abused, and forgotten. All they need is a chance to heal. Please, don't take that away from them." His plea resonated deeply, sparking an outpouring of public support. Residents rallied behind the cause, attending hearings and signing petitions to keep the sanctuary open. In the end, the council granted a temporary extension, allowing Jimmy and his team to continue their work while exploring permanent solutions. It was a victory, but a fragile one. As Jimmy returned to the sanctuary that evening, he found Bella standing at the edge of her enclosure, gazing up at him with cautious curiosity. For the first time since her rescue, she wagged her tail. And in that moment, Jimmy knew they were on the right path. The sanctuary buzzed with newfound energy as the dogs continued their transformations. Each day brought small victories. Bella ventured farther outside her kennel. Rocky allowed volunteers to approach without snapping. And Charlie became the unofficial mascot of the facility, his tail wagging non-stop as he greeted visitors. But just as Jimmy began to feel a glimmer of hope, an unforeseen crisis struck that tested the resilience of everyone involved. One morning, Ruth rushed into the main office, her face pale with panic. "Jimmy, it's Max," she said breathlessly. "He's collapsed." CT. Jimmy's heart sank as he followed her to the medical wing, where the veterinarians were already tending to the pit bull. Despite his earlier progress, Max's broken leg had developed a severe infection, spreading rapidly through his weakened body. "He needs surgery," one of the vets explained grimly. "But it's risky and expensive." Jimmy didn't hesitate. "Do whatever it takes to save him." As the team prepped Max for emergency surgery, Jimmy sat in the waiting area, his mind racing. He thought about all the dogs they'd rescued, their pain, their courage, their slow but steady recoveries. Losing Max now would feel like a betrayal of everything they'd worked so hard to achieve. Hours later, the vet emerged with a weary smile. "He made it," she announced. "It was touch and go for a while, but Max is stable." Relief washed over Jimmy as he exhaled sharply. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. Max's survival became a turning point, not just for him, but for the entire sanctuary. His fight inspired the volunteers and staff to push harder, to believe in the possibility of miracles even when odds seemed insurmountable. In the days that followed, Jimmy decided to take the project to the next level. "We're not just rehabilitating these dogs," he told Chandler during a late-night strategy call. "We're rewriting their stories, and I want the world to see what's possible when we refuse to give up." With that, Jimmy launched a massive campaign, a documentary-style series chronicling the dogs' journeys from rescue to recovery. Using his platform, he shared daily updates, videos, and photos, highlighting individual stories and inviting fans to participate in the process. Each dog became a symbol of resilience. Charlie, the Labrador whose zest for life returned with every meal, reminded viewers of the power of patience and care. Luna, the Chihuahua mix who overcame her fear of human touch, embodied the importance of trust and compassion. Rocky E., the terrier learning to let go of his past trauma, demonstrated the strength of forgiveness and second chances. The response was overwhelming. Millions tuned in to follow the dog's progress, sharing their own stories of rescue and redemption. Donations skyrocketed, enabling Jimmy to expand the sanctuary and hire additional staff. Adoption applications flooded in, with families eager to provide loving homes for the rehabilitated dogs. But the most powerful moment came when Jimmy received a message from a young girl named Emily. "My mom says I can't have a dog because we don't have enough money," she wrote, "but I watch your videos every day and pray for the puppies to get better. They make me happy when I'm sad." Moved by her words, Jimmy arranged for Emily and her family to visit the sanctuary. When they arrived, he introduced them to Bella, the German Shepherd mix, who had finally begun to trust again. "This is Bella," Jimmy said gently, guiding Emily's hand toward the dog's head. "She's been through a lot, but she's learning to love again." Tears streamed down Emily's face as Bella licked her palm, her tail wagging softly. "She's beautiful," Emily whispered, hugging the dog tightly. Her mother turned to Jimmy, her voice trembling with gratitude. "You have no idea what this means to us. Thank you for everything." Moments like these reinforced why Jimmy had embarked on this journey in the first place. It wasn't just about saving dogs. It was about healing hearts, building connections, and reminding people of the goodness in the world. As the sanctuary prepared for its first round of adoptions, Jimmy gathered the staff and volunteers for a heartfelt speech. "These dogs taught us something important," he began, his voice filled with emotion. "They showed us that no matter how broken someone or something might seem, there's always hope, always a chance to start over." He paused, scanning the room. "And now, it's our job to ensure they find the happiness they deserve." With that, the adoption event commenced. Families poured in, eager to meet the dogs they'd followed online. Tears flowed freely as matches were made. Charlie went home with a retired couple. Luna found solace with a single mother and her daughter. And Rocky bonded instantly with a veteran struggling with PTSD. By the end of the day, nearly half the dogs had been adopted, their tails wagging furiously as they left the sanctuary for the last time. But Jimmy knew the work wasn't over. For every dog who found a home, there were countless others still waiting for their chance. And as he stood in the emptying courtyard, watching the sun dip below the horizon, Jimmy made a silent promise. This was only the beginning. The adoption event marked a monumental milestone, but Jimmy wasn't ready to celebrate just yet. While dozens of dogs had found loving homes, many still remained at the sanctuary, each one deserving of the same happiness their adopted counterparts had discovered. Determined to ensure no dog was left behind, Jimmy announced an ambitious expansion of his rescue mission. He unveiled plans to build a state-of-the-art animal rehabilitation center, a permanent facility equipped with advanced medical resources, behavioral therapy programs, and spacious living areas designed to nurture both body and spirit. "This isn't just about Greenville," Jimmy declared during a live stream update. "It's about creating a model that can be replicated worldwide. A place where abandoned animals are given the care, love, and second chances they deserve." To fund the project, he launched a global crowdfunding campaign, inviting fans and supporters to contribute. The response was staggering. Within days, millions poured in from donors across the globe, along with heartfelt messages of gratitude and encouragement. "You're changing lives, not just the dogs, but ours too," one fan wrote. "Thank you for reminding us what kindness looks like." As construction on the new facility began, Jimmy turned his attention to the remaining dogs, ensuring each one received personalized care tailored to their unique needs. For Bella, the German Shepherd mix who had come so far yet still struggled with trust, Jimmy arranged private sessions with a renowned animal behaviorist. "It's not just about training," the behaviorist explained. "It's about building a relationship, showing her she's safe." Jimmy took those words to heart, spending hours sitting quietly beside Bella's kennel, speaking softly and offering treats until she finally ventured close enough to nuzzle his hand. "She's ready," the behaviorist confirmed after weeks of progress. "She just needs the right family, one who understands her journey and is willing to walk alongside her." When that family finally arrived, a kind-hearted couple with experience fostering traumatized animals, Jimmy personally introduced them to Bella. "This is your girl," he said, smiling as Bella cautiously sniffed their outstretched hands. "Take good care of her." As the couple led Bella to their car, her tail wagged tentatively, a small but significant sign of hope. Rocky, the scrappy terrier, also found his match in a former soldier named Marcus, who recognized the dog's pain as a reflection of his own struggles with PTSD. Together, man and dog embarked on a healing journey, learning to trust and support each other through shared experiences. By the time the new rehabilitation center opened its doors months later, every single dog from the original rescue had been adopted. The grand opening ceremony drew crowds from across the country, including families who had welcomed the dogs into their homes. Standing before the assembled guests, Jimmy addressed the crowd with a mix of humility and pride. "When we started this journey," he began, his voice steady but filled with emotion, "I thought I was here to save 100 abandoned dogs. But what I didn't realize was that they would end up saving me and countless others instead." He paused, scanning the sea of faces illuminated by the golden glow of string lights. "These dogs reminded us of something fundamental, that kindness has the power to heal, that resilience exists even in the darkest places, and that love, patience, and belief can transform lives, including our own." As applause erupted, Jimmy invited Marcus and Rocky to join him on stage. The once aggressive terrier now sat calmly at Marcus's side, his eyes bright with contentment. "This is Rocky," Jimmy said, gesturing to the dog. "And this is Marcus, the man who gave him a second chance. Together, they remind us that redemption is possible, for everyone." Tears streamed down Marcus's face as he hugged Rocky tightly. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice breaking, "for everything." The ceremony concluded with a symbolic ribbon cutting, officially opening the rehabilitation center to the public. Inside, walls adorned with photos of the rescued dogs told their stories, testaments to the power of compassion and perseverance. In the weeks that followed, the center became a beacon of hope for abandoned animals and their advocates alike. Veterinarians, trainers, and volunteers worked tirelessly to rehabilitate new arrivals, while families eager to adopt lined up daily to meet their potential furry companions. Meanwhile, Jimmy returned to Greenville, carrying the lessons he'd learned back to his team. "We've done some incredible things," he told them during a meeting, "but there's still so much more we can achieve. Let's keep pushing boundaries, challenging ourselves, and reminding the world that kindness is the most powerful force we have." His words ignited a renewed sense of purpose within the group, setting the stage for future projects that would continue to push the boundaries of philanthropy. And as Jimmy sat in his office late one night, scrolling through photos of the dog's transformations, he couldn't help but smile. Because sometimes, rescuing 100 abandoned dogs could lead to transforming thousands of lives, including his own.